Okay, my name is Jabula N, and today I actually want to talk about creating a passive income. This is basically a strategy I also used myself back in 2016, just to create passive income for myself. I started Uber back in 2016. I was in the Uber business for more than 5 years, where I first started as a partner driver. This is a strategy in which you start driving for someone. So that's how I started into the Uber business. My business that I was doing at the time wasn't doing so well. So then I started to come up with other ways. In fact, it wasn't just me, but also my friends who were involved, and we kind of like all started together within almost the same time frame. And then we went, applied, enrolled into the system. We did background checks. Then we looked for partners. So then we became partner drivers, and we're just doing. But yeah, it started from there, and then it progressed. Wow, that's how I started. Now, how can you turn that into a passive income? Well, to make it obviously a passive income, the idea of passive income is that you are not directly involved into the business. You are not like hands on. It's something that you do, but you are also it's working itself. Okay, so sorry about the noise. So, but now how we did it was we kind of the way we did it. We started as partner drivers. Later on, we put in our own vehicles. So then I put in my own vehicle. So that's the idea. The idea is that you don't drive yourself, because if you drive yourself, you are more active than you are passive. Then it's defeats the entire purpose. So how do you then do it? Well, firstly, I would have to say you must have a vehicle that you are not using every day, and this vehicle actually just have to be a hatchback or a sedan. And then you can take that and find a driver who already has a slot in the e-hailing platforms, either Uber, Bolt, or InDrive, and then you set up a strategy with them. Now, the structure of how you offer your partnership varies. Other people, they pay, for instance, let's take it 2,000. So if you set up 2,000 a week, and whatever they make, they keep. The last time really I was in the business, it was around that amount, 2,000 a week. That's what the driver needs to pay you weekly, and whatever they make is up to them. I still take the maintenance of the car, and the cost of the car, but whatever they make and whatever cost is associated with their driving, their day-to-day operations, that is on their own. So basic standard 2,000. You take the 2,000 every week. That's it. But this is different from place to place. Here in PE, those were the standards. I think it's different when you go to Cape Town. It's different when you go to Joburg. And again, you also need to consider again the amount of competition there is in that given town. These days now, there's a lot more of these e-hailing platforms. It's like every other day there's a new one. But essentially, all the drivers, they're all sort of like enroll and they get slots for each. So whichever one, because you'd find that a driver can open about 2 apps or 3 apps at the same time, and whichever goes first, they will take. So it doesn't matter whether they're in Uber, it doesn't matter whether they're in Bolt, it doesn't matter whether they're in Didi, InDriver, whichever platform really it is, that you can just go for it. I'm obviously just saying Uber because Uber is like the most sort of well-known e-hailing, but Bolt now is like second competitor, if it actually haven't climbed up beyond Uber. And to create that passive income is you give the driver their own car, and then you go and do whatever you want to do, whether you're at work, whether you're staying at home, but then they must have the car, because the whole idea of just giving a driver for certain hours might distract them or even get in the way of how they want to structure their own working hour. In fact, you don't want them to do anything. They can do whatever they want to do, but you just want 2,000 rand a week. Now, here's the trick. 2,000, if you making 2,000, let's just say, for example, you're already paying for this car. And if you're already paying for this car, let's just say maybe you're paying 3,500 for the car. You also need to pay an insurance. Let's just say 1,000 rand for a car. So essentially, when you're making 8,000, but then you have about 3,500 for installment, you have about 1,000 rand for insurance. So you that combined, you're already making about 4,500. You're already on 4,500. Now, if you're making 8,000, that leaves you with 3,500. Okay, and that will be your monthly profit. That will be your monthly income that is getting in every month. Now, this is not always guaranteed because there are some other needs that may come into the car, because you take the maintenance cost of the car, you take the wear and tears of the car. So if you bust the lights, you're gonna have to pay for that. You have to, and in some other platforms, you have to get all the insurance, the public liability insurance. You're gonna have to get that insurance. You're gonna have to get, and that all goes to you. But like I said, it depends. But you can end up really making or even profiting around 3,000 a month, around 3,000 rand a month, after you've paid your installments and probably even other small maintenance issues. Now, one of the things that is really good about this kind of business is that you don't have the same cost every month. So it's not like you're going to maintain your car every month. No, you don't. Especially if it's a fairly new car or it's a okay car. Then you don't have, there isn't any much wear and tears that you have to do. You do, however, you will probably have to buy your tires from time to time, but it's not a month-to-month situation. The tires will last you a good 6 months or even more, or depending on the brand, depending on how far and how often your driver drives and where, and there's a lot of factors that come into that, but it's not a month-to-month. But essentially, you will be making about 3,500 a month. And I think that is a very good income to make. Now, I'm not saying you must go out there and go buy a car to put it into bulk. It's not as easy like that. Again, this is not me selling or telling you to come up with, this is a great idea for you to go and create this passive income. It's not as easy like that. There's a lot of challenges that come into this whole thing. My biggest fear is giving someone else my vehicle, especially if your vehicle is fairly new. Even if you are buying it just for the working purposes, it can become a little bit tricky, and it becomes very difficult and even expensive to give someone else your car. One of the biggest challenges there is when you give someone else your car is how they handle your car and how they maintain that car. One of the it is well known that if you give someone else your car, they do not give it the same care, and they do not give the same amount of attention to your car as you would normally do. So this really strains your car. I have friends who have given people cars. It's either they crash. If they don't crash, there's some issues that are involved. So you must get in there with a very good strategy, and you must actually have an idea of what's happening in the business, rather than just getting in blind and then moving. So for instance, there's a friend of mine that I knew had a fleet. He had a constant checks on his vehicles, he had a system in place for drivers. Essentially, you don't want to control your driver as to where to drive and how to drive, where do they stop. I don't like to do that. It's much better they do their own thing whenever they want to do their thing, however they want to do their thing, without you having to be to police them around. You don't want to police them, because then that limits them and limits their freedom, for them to be their own self at their own time, drive whatever they want to do, as long as they pay you. But again, like I said, sometimes that does come in with the challenge of them abusing the vehicle. It gets a little bit, you just have to get in there with the strategy. It is a good strategy to sort of passive income way, but you also have to be very strategic about it as to how you're going to keep check of the maintenance of the car. Is even the partner driver you're giving a vehicle to, do you trust them enough? Okay, so there are other ways at which you can come in, and one of that is that you obviously do not want to give a young it's much better to get someone who's a lot older and matured, give a car to. They have a much easier hand towards a car as compared to a younger crowd. Because obviously younger drivers, on a Friday night they probably want to go party, and again they'll be taking your car there. So it's much better to have an older partner driver who will take care of your vehicle. And that's not to say that the older guys are a lot more careful than younger guys. I mean, there are some other younger guys who actually are very careful. That's a strategy, and that's what you need to consider going in. To think, who do you give your car? You're not just going to get any Tom, Dick, and Harry out there and you just give them your vehicle just because you found a partner. Okay. But again, one thing that you need to consider is whichever location that you're in, what is an amount of what competition is there, or what so for instance, back in 2016, it was just only Uber here in PE, and then the following year, if I'm not mistaken, or later that year, was Taxify, which later changed to Bolt. But that on its own was started to sort of introduce competition in there, because then you'll have one client will be competing between those two platforms. Now there's InDriver, there was Didi, there was this, so the competition is still there. Now the competition isn't only in between these e-hailing platforms, but it is also within drivers themselves. You're getting more drivers. For instance, Bolt opened it up for a lot of people, and anybody who wanted to get in would get in, whereas Uber somewhat limited it. When they started, they limited it. They only took a number of drivers, and then they stopped, and then there was no more slots for anyone. So in that way, it worked like magic for people who were in that at the time, because then even if you had a fleet, you would have a slot for all your fleet, and then they closed it off. And that just was it, and that was great because it was lucrative for the business at the time. But now it's not so lucrative. It might be still the same, but considering the amount of cost there is, the fuel prices went, skyrocketed. Everything just went up, and the little incentives that we were also getting back then were a lot more than it is now. There's less incentive now. Now we have a lot of partner drivers. There's a lot of fleets on the road. There's more competition, and yet there isn't much changes in terms of the fares on the road. Per trip. Trip fares are kind of like, they're still low. Okay, so now you probably have to drive like a lot more times to make just to make little. Whereas before, back in 2016. A driver would drive less and they'll still make more. Now you drive more and you still make less. So there's a lot of things to consider. Again, this strategy is just a strategy. I think it is lucrative if you have a vehicle that you are just not using. It's sitting in the garage, you are not using it, you are not dependent on it, you don't need it on a Friday night. It's just sitting there, and maybe you don't want to trade it in, or you don't want to sell it, and you're thinking, there's this vehicle, then it's a good idea to just put it in there. You don't care about it, or you don't have so much emotional attachment to it, you're not sentimental about it, then you can just put it in there, and then it can make money for you. But if you have so much dependency on it, you have this emotional attachment to it, then probably not a good idea, and something that you can probably just maybe forget about it, or you must have a very strict strategies put in place and systems so that you can easily manage your vehicles and how it is used. But this is a great way of creating that income. For me, I was more active than I was passive for a very, very long time. In fact, like my passive was it was more limited. Because again, I had so much attachment to my assets that you didn't want. It was I was very attached. But again, I do have associates who bought fleets just for this, just to get this, and others were just getting in cars just to get this thing going. Because I mean, an extra 3,000 rand a month does a lot. That's a lot. Especially when we're talking in terms of passive income. So it is something to consider, but again, as you consider it, think of other factors that can control your income. I hope this video was helpful. I'll probably share even other different strategies within the e-hailing. I mean, I did e-hailing for a very long time, so I'll probably share even within e-hailing itself as to what to consider. So for instance, what platform is more lucrative in comparison to others. So that's probably for another video, and I won't be able to share. This video is only just going to get longer. But you know, there's also that, you know, what platforms to consider. But you don't have, I mean, if it's, again, that's for more of an active driver than a passive one, or a passive partner, you know, because if you're an active driver, then you want a more lucrative platform, you want a lot more, you know, you want a lot more incentives than, you know, just being in any platform. But then again, like I said, probably for another video. But do consider it if you have a vehicle that is standing in a garage, not doing anything, less emotional attachment to it, not sentimental about it. It's literally just something that you don't want to get rid of it at the same time. Then you can just put it in the platform, and instead of it sitting in the garage and just costing you money, you can actually turn that around, and it can make you at least about between 2,000 to 2,500 a week, depending on where you are. And I think that's a good strategy to start your passive income journey. Well, I'll see you on the next one.